let's find a nice comfy seat. Just let your spine get nice and tall here. Think about as much height as you can create. Maybe let the eyes close if that feels appropriate for you. There's this kingdom that has just inherited the entirety of another kingdom. This was a thing that sometimes happened ages ago. A leader or ruler of a specific kingdom would leave the entirety of his kingdom to another ruler. And that had just happened here. Give ourselves just 30 more seconds, just thinking about height in the spine. Like the crown of the head is just extending towards the ceiling or sky. And then when it feels appropriate, let's allow the eyes to open if they're closed. We'll transition from our seat to tabletop. And as you get in tabletop, set up so that the middle of your hand and the middle of your knee are in alignment. So really try to pay attention to where the hand is in our placement here. And then exhale, round the middle of the back, tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone, bow out into that flexion shape. Inhale, drop the belly, lift the tailbone, lift the chin. Exhale, middle of the back rounds, chin tucks, tailbone tucks. Inhale, belly drops, tailbone lifts, chin lifts. Let's just move through this a couple times at our own pace, just exploring both sides of our spinal articulation, full flexion, full extension. Trying to move through every last little bit of room that's available to us. Maybe one more time, each direction. Or when you feel complete. And we'll come back to a nice neutral tabletop. Think about the spine being flat. Curl your toes, lift your seat, roll your way into down dog. Maybe you pedal the calves out a little bit here. Eventually, we're going to come back to hands and knees tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and sink our way into child's pose. Sinking our way into child's pose and just thinking about the length in the spine as you settle there. So it's a different orientation as we had when we were seated. But maybe you're thinking about creating that length the same way. So maybe this is through the crown of the head extending out. Maybe you're using core engagement. 15 more seconds here. Think about the length in your spine. And when it feels appropriate, let's pull our way forward to hands and knees tabletop. And then bring your knees as close together as you can comfortably get them. And take the hands out maybe like an extra inch in either direction. And exhale, round the back, tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone. Inhale, drop the belly, lift the tailbone, lift the chin. Exhale, round the back, tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone. Inhale, drop the belly, lift the tailbone, lift the chin. And relax back to neutral. Let's curl our toes, lift our seat, keep the legs close together as they are, and roll back into this little bit of a modified version of down dog. You can pedal this out if it feels beneficial. And then let's walk our way forward to the front of the mat. Inhaling into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. Let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Eventually, we'll find our way to mountain. And we'll just land in mountain. Give yourself like 5 to 10% additional glute squeeze. And think about getting the legs to really get vertical and try to carry that with you into torso length. And then trying to stay as tall as you can. So glute squeeze to help elevate the torso. Let's slide the left foot back into lunge. And instead of worrying about the position of the torso here, squeeze the glutes that like 10 to 15% extra. So you may end up with a little torso tilt, which is fine. We're just trying to get a little glute squeeze. And then think about taking the energy up, even if that is at a slight forward tilt. So if you can get the torso vertical, great. If you're at a slight forward tilt, no worry about that. Just think about energy up. And then we'll sweep the arms overhead if they're not already. And then drop the hands and step to the front of the mat. As you get to the front of the mat, maybe you take that little natural bend of the knees, little softness in the glutes. And then we'll re-engage, get that lift and elevation. And then we're going to do the same thing to the second side. So with the glute squeeze staying with us, we slide back, we land, we keep that glute squeeze. So we have more activation than we might normally have. We think about lifting and elevating. We'll sweep the arms if we haven't already. And then we'll drop the hands and step to the front of the mat. Sweep your arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. From half lift, bring your nose over the middle of your left toe mound. And then relax the head down towards the left toes. Inhale to half lift and come back to neutral. And then bring your head over the right toe mound and release into that right toe mound fold. And then inhale to half lift, reset to neutral, and then exhale to the middle fold, traditional forward fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk our way into down dog. And then shift forward to plank. Drop the knees to tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and sink your way back into child's pose. And as you land in child's pose, again, think about that horizontal length. So you may use core squeeze. It may just be crown of the head extending out, but we're thinking about how we can get long here. And so the king who inherited this new kingdom summoned the royal cartographer because he wanted a full and encompassing new survey of the territory inherited. So the cartographer graciously accepts this task that he has no choice in and asks for an assistant. And he asks for a specific assistant. And the king informs him that that specific assistant is on another task. So he asks for a second specific assistant. And the king informs him that that specific assistant is also already involved in another task. And one more time, he asks for a specific assistant. And the king one more time says, sorry, busy. Cartographer's a little bit frustrated at this point. Says, who is available then? King points over to the corner. There's this yogi sitting in the room silently. Says, she is. The yogi kind of slowly opens her eyes. And the cartographer is just shaking his head. He cannot believe this is the fortune that has fallen upon him. Last 15 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, let's pull our way forward to hands and knees tabletop. Just check and see where the hands are lined up in comparison to the knees. No need to adjust or tweak. Just kind of notice where you naturally end up there. Then curl your toes, lift your seat, and roll your way back into down dog. Let's walk our way to the front of the mat. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum and let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. We'll come into mountain eventually. Get yourself that glute squeeze so that we have like a really vertical structural integrity here. And then just see what it feels like to lift the heels or lighten the weight in your heels, depending on how your balance feels tonight. Maybe you're just taking the toe mounds and adding a little bit of weight to them, or maybe you're lifting the heels off the mat. We're staying with the glute squeeze so that we're elevated in our torso, so that our musculature is lifting us up. And then from this position, so with either a heel lift or more pressure in the toe mounds, we're going to slide our left leg back. And then we'll sweep our arms to crescent. Note what's going on in that front leg. When we take some weight off the heel, it's much easier for the knee to kind of flop around. So you may be peeling out. Try to stay fully integrated. And then drop the hands and step back into either a tiptoe or a light pressure on the heels. Stay with your glute squeeze. And then slide our right foot straight back. Light on that front heel or heel lifted, depending on how you feel. Sweeping the arms to crescent. Thinking about the energy of the musculature lifting you up. And then drop the hands and we'll return to our tiptoe or light heel pressure. And then release yourself down so that you're balanced toe mound to heel, but stay with your glute squeeze so we're lifted. Sweep your arms behind you or to your side, whatever feels best for your shoulders, accessible for your shoulders. So we'll either interlace our fingers behind us, back of the hands to the sacrum, or hands to the side. And with an exhale, we're going to take a half fold. And think about extending out here and then add a little glute squeeze. Hard to glute squeeze in this half fold, but really try to make that happen and just see how the QL musculature, the musculature on either side of the spinal column responds to that. And then slowly lift yourself back up into mountain. Sweep the arms up and overhead and drop the hands to heart center. Exhale, slide your left foot straight back into lunge. Ground your left heel and roll to warrior two. We should have a little bit of space here. So as you get into your warrior two, think about squeezing the glutes to help orient the torso. So we want the torso to be running directly perpendicular to the edge of your mat. And we're going to use some glute squeeze to make that happen. Don't allow for the front knee to collapse in with the glute squeeze. And then we'll spin the left heel up and we'll be back in crescent. Drop the hands and step to the front of the mat. Just to reset, balanced weight distribution, a little bit of engagement in the glutes so our musculature is lifting our body up, really actively lifting us up. And then let's slide our right foot straight back. Ground your right heel and roll to two. And then once again, glute squeeze to help orient the torso. Make sure you're fully integrated on that front leg. Right heel spins up or back into crescent. Drop the hands and step to the front of the mat. Sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk our way into down dog. Shift our weight forward to plank. Drop the tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and sink our way into child's pose. Land in child's pose and just release here. Once again, think about the length in the spinal column. So we've been lengthening vertically, actively and consciously and almost exclusively for the first third of practice. Just think about what you can do, what tweaks and adjustments you can make here as you're horizontal with the spine to get a little bit more length. And we'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds to let that settle in. Just easy, fluid respiration as you expand. And then we'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. Splay those fingers out wide. Get the neutrality in the spine. Curl your toes, lift your seat. Let's find our way into down dog. As you get back into down dog, just think about the spinal length. And I'm not going to cue spinal length as we go through this next sequence, but you try to maintain that elevation of the body, of the torso through that musculature engagement as we work our way. So we'll walk to the front of the mat. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. Let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Eventually elevating into mountain. Bring our hands together at heart center. Slide your left foot straight back into lunge. Sweep your way to crescent. And then ground the left heel and roll to warrior two. Big wide shape here. And then bend your right forearm or your right elbow and bring your right forearm onto your right thigh for a little supported modified side angle. Left arm reaches straight up. Think about creating a line between the knee, the shoulder, and the shoulder as you reach and extend. And then draw yourself back into two. Left heel spins up. We're into crescent. Drop the hands and step to the front of the mat. Slide the left foot straight back into lunge. Sweep the arms into crescent. Ground the right heel and roll to two. Bend your left elbow, left forearm to left thigh. Stack the shoulders and the knee. Big wide space here. Draw back up into warrior two. Right heel spins to crescent. Drop the hands and step to the front of the mat. Find your mountain. Let your eyes close if that feels accessible to you. And then just tune into your body here. Ask yourself if there's the opportunity for musculature engagement to lift you, to engage to height. Or if when you got back here, all of the cueing we've done for the first 20 minutes of practice got us to the point where we land and we stay elevated. Think about the toe splay and the activation of the toe mound, how that works on this anterior tibialis musculature, how we get up into the quads and hamstrings, how that quad hamstring strength carries us into the glutes. Once you get the glutes engaged, it really does elevate the torso, and it's almost, when the glutes engage, it's almost like the core has to engage so that we don't just fall over. So if we engage our glutes, if we can energize ourselves from our feet to our glutes, we're going to be in a structurally strong position for mountain. And if we're in a structurally strong position for mountain, we're in a structurally strong position for standing in line at the coffee shop, standing in line at the grocery store, getting up from our desk. So just feel all of the musculature that we have turned on here and think about how important this is to keep this pressure off of our spinal column. And then let's, with all of this activity in mind, slide our left foot straight back into lunge, ground our left heel, blossom out into two. We're going to slide back into our right hamstring and just tilt our way forward for a little triangle. Once again, thinking about the shoulder stack more than anything else. It's super easy in triangle to be worried about the hamstring positioning. Think about what your shoulders are doing. You can bend the knee, that's beautiful, right? But if the shoulders are off kilter, then we're starting to put our spine in a bad spot. We'll rebend the front knee, draw ourselves into two. When you get into two, Think about the tailbone just dropping in, and then spin your left heel up and we'll come into crescent. Drop your hands, we'll step to the front of the mat. Cue up all of that mountain engagement. So toe mound, activity across the transverse arch, activity through the tibialis, activity through the hamstrings, the quads, the glutes. That carries us into our torso activity. And then our right foot will slide straight back. We'll ground our right heel and roll to 2. Slide back into our left hamstring and just tilt our way forward in a triangle. Again, thinking about our shoulders in triangle instead of our hamstrings. Being soft and at ease here. And then eventually bending that front knee, drawing ourselves to 2. When you get to 2, think about the tailbone dropping down into the full approximation of the shape. Right heel spins upward into crescent. Drop the hands and we'll step to the front of the mat. Sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. Bring your nose over the right toe mound and drop down into this little revolved fold. Inhale to half lift, come back to neutral. Toe mount or head over the left toe mound, and then release our way towards that left toe mound. Inhale to neutral. And exhale into a traditional forward fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk our way to down dog. Let's shift forward to plank. Come down to hands and knees tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and sink our way back into child's pose. Really just finding that ease in child's pose. Length. But because we're not fighting gravity, we can create length with ease. So rather begrudgingly, the cartographer and this yogi head out the next day. And they work their way out through the kingdom. It takes several weeks to get to the border, but eventually they do cross the border from their kingdom into this new world, a world that neither of them have ever been in before. And almost immediately they're struck by how different things are here. The vegetation is different. The animals are different. The smells are different. The sights are obviously different. Every night as they set up their camp, they're learning about new types of creatures and critters, new types of plants that are useful, dangerous. We'll give ourselves just 20 more seconds here. And when it feels appropriate for you, let's pull ourselves to hands and knees tabletop. Take your hands now and line them up with the middle of the hand, middle of the knee once again. So now we're probably a little bit closer with our hands than we might normally be. And then take your hands forward, maybe like a half inch to an inch and a half, depending on what feels most natural for you, even if this feels a little bit unnatural. Most natural is what we're looking for. And then curl your toes, lift your seat, and roll your way back into down dog. Take your right foot and extend it straight back and behind you. And then let's step our right foot in between our hands. Sweep your way to crescent. Squeeze the glutes after you get into your full crescent. And then drop the hands to the mat. Ground your left heel. And let your left hand roll you up to warrior two. Once you get into your two, squeeze your glutes. Left heel is going to spin up. Hands are going to roll all the way back to the mat. Sweep away to crescent. When you get into your full crescent, squeeze the glutes. Drop the hands to the mat. Ground your left heel. Bring your right hand to the big toe edge, medial edge of the right foot, and roll to a little side angle. And then if it feels accessible, slide back into a little triangle. Stacked shoulders, fluid breath, long spine. Those are the things we're really looking for. And then squeeze your glutes if it's accessible. Left hand comes down to the mat. Right knee bends. Left heel lifts. Sweep your way into crescent. Squeeze the glutes once you get to full crescent. Float the hands to the mat. Step the right foot back into down dog. And get your tailbone all the way back here. Then our left foot will extend straight back and behind us. Step your left foot in between your hands. Sweep your way to crescent. When you get to full crescent, squeeze the glutes, lock into that shape. Drop your hands to the mat. Ground your right heel. Let your right hand roll you up into two. When you get into your full shape, squeeze the glutes. Right heel spins upward into crescent. Drop the hands to the mat. Ground your right heel. Bring your left hand to big toe edge, medial edge, and let the right hand open to side angle. If it's accessible, slide back into triangle. Either way, when you get to your full shape, squeeze the glutes. Eventually, right hand comes down to the mat, left knee bends. Right heel spins up, sweep your way into crescent. Full crescent, squeeze the glutes, settle into the shape. Drop the hands to the mat. Step the left foot back into down dog. Now you may notice some pretty good fatigue there. When we add that glute squeeze, the body has to work a lot harder. Down to hands and knees, tabletop. Flip the tops of the feet and sink our way back into child's pose. Really land in your child's pose here. It's going to be a relatively short little pause here. We'll give ourselves just 30 seconds. Try to use this as a respiratory recovery, heart rate recovery. Let some blood flow happen back into the legs. And then when it feels appropriate, let's pull ourselves to hands and knees, tabletop. From tabletop, we'll curl our toes, lift our seat, and find our way to down dog. And then walk our way forward to the front of the mat. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Drift your awareness to your sacrum, and we'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Be at ease here. Once you feel like you've got vertical, squeeze the glutes and reestablish that lift. Bring your hands together, heart center. Carry that energy of glute squeeze with you as you send the seat back into chair. Tibia and fibia stay vertical. Hips push back. Torso can be wherever, right? Torso could be low. It can be high. We don't want to bend in the back. That's really the only thing we are asking for of our torso. And we want to stay with some glute squeeze, which makes all of this much harder. And then we'll rise back into mountain. And now as you get into mountain, get that glute squeeze turned on again. And now we might start to feel some musculature fatigue. When you're ready, we're going to head back into that chair. So toes splay, glutes are squeezed. We're pushing the tailbone back. Hinge at the hips. Find that angle of the thighs. Stay vertical, lower body, lower legs. Stay with the glute squeeze. We'll rise back to mountain. Again, as you get into this lift, glute squeeze turns on. Take a cycle of breath. And then one more time, we're going to push the chair back. Find that glute activation. See if you can get the hamstrings a little lower without letting the knees go forward. So big key is knees are not going forward. We'll rise back into mountain, sweep the arms, exhale through forward fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands. We'll walk our way back into down dog. Let's come down to hands and knees, tabletop, flip the tops of the feet, and we'll sink back into last child's pose of practice here. So as you settle back, kind of notice how the glutes are responding to this, 40 minutes of relatively glute-focused practice this evening. And at the same time, that glute musculature, such a powerhouse in the body for stabilization, for structural integrity, and so underactivated in most of our lives. Give ourselves just 15 more seconds here. And when it feels appropriate, let's pull ourselves to hands and knees tabletop. We'll extend our legs out in front of us for a little staff. And then from staff, let's just find our way forward into a fold. We'll give ourselves just about 60 more seconds here in this fold. Just softening where you can to expand. And then when it feels appropriate for you, let's bring ourselves into staff and then eventually lower ourselves onto our spine. First time that we've let the spine and the mat meet. And maybe a really insightful moment here. All of the glute engagement that we've done has been working to integrate and align the spine. So as you lay back here, if you feel a little bit more than you maybe expect, that should be par for the course. That might be par for the course. See if you can let the lumbar be a little more neutral than maybe you might expect. So the sacrum and the lumbar just rest supported against the mat, or as supported and as neutral as they can be. And then when it feels appropriate for you, let's bring our knees into a bent position if they're not already. Let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. This is not going to be a super long hold. This may, there's the potential here that as the knees go out wide and you get that little extension energy in the lumbar, that may feel more intense than you're expecting. Again, all the glute work we did actually has a lot of impact on the back musculature. So if you're feeling extra sensation here, that may very well be why. How about that? One night, the cartographer and this yogi are setting up their camp, and the sun is starting to set. They got to camp a little bit early, and in the distance, this cartographer sees this huge wall of just like gray. And he points out, he asks the yogi, "What is that?" And she looks up and she squints at it for a little bit. She looks back at him and she says, "I think it's fog." And then she gets all camped in. Meanwhile, the cartographer rips open his bag and starts rifling through his books. Last 10 seconds here. When it feels appropriate, we're going to bring our knees back to neutral. And we're going to take the feet out to the width of the mat and let the knees fall in towards one another. The goal here is to deactivate our musculature. So in theory, this shape should put more neutrality in the lumbar spine, should offer more support from the mat beneath us. If that's not happening, or if the knees are just uncomfortably hanging, if you have something you can place in between, that's a great start. If you don't have anything to place in between, just go knees out wide too. So feet out wide, knees out wide. If things are falling together and you're getting that neutral spinal alignment, then that works perfectly. And so as the yogi's falling asleep that night, she hears this cartographer now by candlelight just rifling through these books. And she notices when they wake up in the morning that he is not only his like regular grouchy self, but he's also seems extra agitated and almost like nervous. Last 60 seconds here. And when it feels appropriate for you, let's bring our knees back out to neutral or out to the width of the feet if they're not already. And we'll heel to our feet in line with our hips. And then just ask yourself if you want or need anything before Shavasana. And if you do, let's offer that to ourselves now. If you have everything you need, if you're ready for some stillness, then let's release ourselves into a shape where we can appreciate some stillness. The next day, the yogi and the cartographer head in the direction of this huge gray wall. And it certainly looks like fog. When they get up to it, they both kind of approach it in silence. The yogi with a sense of wonder, and the cartographer with a sense of dread. Until he finally stops, pulls out a book. He's looking at a picture, looking at a picture in a book, looking up, looking at a picture in a book, looking up. And then he says, the yogi's kind of like reaching out towards this fog wall. And the cartographer shouts, he says, "Stop. Stop right now. Stop right now. This is the Valley of Vipers right here in this book." And he starts reading, and it says, the Valley of Vipers, this fog entrenched world where the winds blow so hard they can crush human bones. And the ground is covered in the most dangerous vipers in the world. And the yogi stops completely in her tracks. She doesn't back away, she just stops. And she closes her eyes and she listens. Just finding your version of ease here. Stillness here. So as the yogi closes her eyes, it's almost like everything stops. And then all at once, almost as if the world started up again, simultaneously, The yogi steps forward and disappears into the fog, and the cartographer screams, "No!" And she's gone. And the cartographer's alone, and he's listening to into the fog. He's listening to hear if he can hear her bones being crushed or her screams or the vipers attacking her. But he hears nothing. And 20 minutes later, she comes out with this like bushel full of strawberries. She says it's absolutely amazing in there. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. Turns out that the cartographer from the previous kingdom had been too scared to push into the fog, had never gone in. So he just created a story about how dangerous this place was. Movement into your wrists, your ankles, your elbows and your knees, your shoulders and your hips, neck, head, jaw, eyes, tongue. Eventually, the entirety of the body will move, and we'll utilize that movement to transition our way back into a seat. In this seated space, let's let our spine get tall, breath get fluid, eyes closed. We'll inhale our hands together at heart center. Just finding that fluidity and ease in your breath while feeling the length in the spine. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that an academic can starve while trying to memorize the menu, while at the same time, a mystic can nourish themselves while enjoying the food? And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Enjoy some food this next week. I will be back in the new year. Have a beautiful set of holidays. Love the heck out of you and see you soon. Mwah.